I'm Gillian O'Brien, and this is my new book, The Darkness Echoing. My grandmother always said she'd make a handsome corpse, and when I saw her laid out on the bed, her hands neatly folded on her stomach, rosary beads entwined in her fingers, her soft leather shoes pointing to the ceiling, I knew she had been right. She was wearing the dress she had made for her son's wedding, an elaborate full-skirted creation in russet, gold and black, on which abstract geometric patterns competed with swirling floral motifs. It looked like a painting by Gustav Klimt. Her eyes were closed, the lamp on the bedside table threw an eerie glow across her pale face. I stood in the doorway, stunned. The clock on the bedside table marked time in languid ticks. My grandmother opened one eye. "Well," she said, "what do you think?" 2 nights earlier, over tea in front of the open fire, my grandmother had outlined her plans for her funeral. This was not the first time. I'd been receiving regular updates about this funeral for years. I knew her choice of undertaker, how she wanted to be waked, and what prayers she had chosen for her memorial card. On this occasion, she wanted to discuss her rig-out. Though far from rich, my grandmother had always been an extremely stylish woman, immaculately turned out in well-made clothes, and her funeral was to be no exception. Her plan, she told me, was to be laid out in the Klimt dress. "But Nana," I said, "it's 20 years old." Nana did not see the problem. "Besides," I added, "you're a much smaller woman now." Nana waved a hand. "Yerra, it'll be fine. Sure Kerwins will sort all that out." Kerwins were the undertaker she had chosen. I was not convinced that their seamstress, assuming they had one, would be quite as nimble-fingered as Nana believed, and it seems my opposition sowed the seeds of doubt. 2 days later, I arrived home from college to find her resplendently, if temporarily, dead. "Take a photo," she demanded. "I want to see how I look." Conversations with Nana about death were as ordinary as conversations about the weather. If you asked her how she was, she would invariably answer, "dying away." A process, though she was in perfect health, seemed to overshadow the last 40 years of her life. And it wasn't her own death, it was other people's. One day, when she returned from one of the innumerable funerals she attended, I asked her if her friend Mrs. Burke had been there. She replied, "Ara she was, barely. That woman would be dead years if she'd the sense to stiffen." On another occasion, I took her on a trip back to her hometown in Clare. I sat in a Sugon chair by the fireside, eating Swiss roll and drinking cups of tea, so strong, as Nana used to say, you could trot a mouse across them. I listened as she and her old school friend Catherine recited a litany of illnesses, deaths and funerals in the parish. As Catherine paused after describing the most recent funeral, Nana sighed and quietly murmured, "Sure, the whole world is dead." Nana was blithely unaware of her morbid nature. When I point out that she was preoccupied by death, hers and other people's, she dismissed my observation with a shake of her head and a "Yerra no more than anyone else." And maybe that's the truth. As a nation, the Irish are obsessed with suffering and death. Where else would a website that publishes death notices get 5 million hits a month? Where else would a marriage proposal begin with, "Do you want to be buried with my people?" Or popular ballads extol the attractions of martyrdom? From birth, the Irish are buried alive in a never-ending avalanche of stories, ballads, plays, wakes, dirges, poems, paintings, ceremonies, museums and heritage sites that celebrate death, misery and the macabre. From the tribulations of Peg Sayers to the plays of Samuel Beckett, we are reared on tales of desolation, oppression, failed rebellions, famine, civil wars and immigration, with the occasional sporting victory to keep our spirits up. Perhaps nowhere on earth is history so inextricably entwined with story, a story of a very dark kind.